Yo, let's talk about life. From the moment you're born, you're given one objective: live. You aren't told how or why, but you're expected to live anyway. And unfortunately for us, life has no regard for concepts of fairness or justice. Life is ambivalent. It allows for everything we experience, good or bad, and you'll be forced to deal with and rationalize these things as they shape who you become. Things only you will be able to see, and only you will be able to respond to. The story of Oyasumi Punpun is interesting for a bunch of different reasons, but I was always drawn to how it depicts growing up. That feeling of experiencing the ambivalence of life for the first time and trying to make sense of it all. In Punpun's younger years, he has this chronic obsession with a girl named Aiko, and their relationship becomes a direct rejection of this ambivalence. For Punpun and Aiko, their home life was less than ideal, and that's putting it lightly. But Punpun's upbringing especially is not all that rare. An abusive man-child for a father and a mother that is emotionally neglectful and clearly has some untreated mental problems. Do I need to bring up the hospital scene? Normally, it would be a parent's job to help their child navigate the uncertainty of life, but when your parents are barely adults themselves, it gets complicated. Maybe the only lesson we ever see Punpun's father teach him is to dream, which is not necessarily bad advice, but on its own is dangerous. The idea that you can seek comfort in your dreams while completely discarding life's ambiguities. Perhaps no character in all of fiction represents losing yourself in a dream as well as Griffith. From the moment we meet Griffith, we're told he has some grand desire that he's been working towards all his life, to have his own kingdom. But for what? He doesn't talk about what kind of a king he wants to become. I was always waiting for the other shoe to drop. But his infamous speech puts everything into perspective. With no relation to social status, class, or background. Whether it suits them or not, people yearn for a dream. And even after being abandoned by a dream, it continues to smolder in the bottom of one's heart, probably until the verge of death. Ultimately, to be born and to then live for no better reason, I can't abide such a lifestyle. This speech gives many interesting insights into Griffith's character, but I think it puts his dream into perspective. It truly does not go deeper than that. For Griffith, he simply dreams because he feels like he has to. Much like Guts with his sword, Griffith's dream acts as a shelter from the ambivalent world, something straightforward and unambiguous that he can always rely on. I must obtain this thing becomes a shield for any uncertainty, guilt, remorse. It's always replaced by a single-minded drive to obtain what you want. It's something Guts looks up to, and that nearly leads him to the same void of nothingness that it led Griffith to, chasing this innocuous goal while the real thing he needs is right beside him. But for people like Griffith, and in some respects people like Guts, things like that aren't absolute enough for them. Griffith lived his whole life running from this ambivalence, keeping his eyes locked straight forward and ignoring all other paths as well as all other people. There was no ambiguous nature in Griffith's life. It was simply, I must win, therefore I will do anything it takes to win. He lived his entire life rejecting this ambiguity, and his very first encounter with it nearly broke him. One loss was all it took to shatter that vision, to shatter that dream. As for Punpun, his dream wasn't something quite so grand. Dreams, at least as Punpun uses them, are a form of escapism, the tendency to seek distraction and relief from unpleasant reality, especially by seeking entertainment or engaging in fantasy. When it comes to unpleasant realities, no series covers it with the gravity and realism Punpun does, especially through Punpun's love life. In their younger years, Punpun and Aiko looked at each other with such a childish innocence. At a point, they became the representation of each other's dream, with their goal of escaping their life binding them into a never-ending loop of idealistic promises and disappointment. But it's only when those two are separated that I think we get real insight into why they are so attached to one another. During this section of the story, I was initially critical of the decision to separate the two. The story without Aiko and that dynamic felt aimless, as if there was no direction in mind. But now I think that's kind of the point. Life just feels like that. We constantly fumble around in the dark and can only celebrate the small sparks of light that surround us. For Punpun, he also had these sparks of light. He had a few friends and even a, well, I don't want to say girlfriend, but love interest. But the issue is that this life was still imperfect, not absolute like Punpun wanted, like all of us want in a way. His friends were just as lacking in purpose as him. They weren't the thing that he could latch on to. And the love interest was imperfect too. She had gotten plastic surgery, she had an ex-husband, and eventually a baby on the way. Obviously not the perfect situation, but life rarely lines up perfectly. Punpun could not handle the weight of this imperfection. So instead, he ran back to Aiko, the embodiment of this false perfection that he seeks, his dream. Punpun and Aiko decide to run away together, and the toxicity of their connection shows itself immediately. They cling to each other with the hope of finding an escape escape from the world, and it makes it impossible for them to leave each other's side. But at the same time, they resent each other for not living up to the perfect vision they had of one another. Especially Poom Poom. He gets violently upset when he realizes Aiko is just a person, like any other girl. Small things like hearing she has a career or a boyfriend send him spiraling, and you can only assume the same happens to Aiko. The idea the other person could ever find another dream, it's scary, it's unpredictable. I know thoughts like this don't feel good, but without them, we're not whole. Poon Poon and Aiko do something that a lot of us do: use love and lust as a tool for escape. If you lose yourself in the other person, all the insecurities and uncertainties that make you cease to matter. At least for periods of time, you can escape these feelings and just dream. But ultimately, discarding everything else and attempting to live only in that escape can only lead to your destruction, as it did for Poon Poon and Aiko, and as it did for Griffith. For Griffith, there was a very clear moment where his desire made him forsake his humanity. I mean, do I even need to say it? You know, I want wings and all that. But for Poon Poon and Aiko, I think it would have to be when they kill Aiko's mother. It's an action that seems extreme, but it's really an extension of a feeling we all love to succumb to: righteous anger. The idea that the person across from you represents all the evils you hate about the world. Therefore, to treat them as less than human is entirely justified, and actually heroic. And justifying that becomes all the easier for them once they had already decided to forgo the rest of the world. But about Aiko's mother, I haven't talked about her much, mainly because she actually represents a much bigger phenomenon within the world of Poom Poom, one that conveniently grants people the absolution they crave. This very second is the peak of science, religion, and culture. It means the world is perfectly right. Shouldn't that be celebrated? Congratulations, everyone. So I thought about it. I thought about it hard while taking a nap, I swear. But I could only come up with one answer. We must discard everything and start fresh for the future. If I become mayor of Tokyo, I will liberate all of Tokyo from the blank slate of lawlessness and chaos. Let's build a new world together. Let's all hold hands as one and talk about the future. If anyone out there doesn't want to hold hands, let's get together and beat them to death. It's fine. They aren't human. Pegasus and his little good vibrations cult is one of the most misunderstood parts of Poom Poom. I've seen it called pointless, boring. I've even seen people say you should skip those parts altogether. But the purpose of this section of the story is very clear. Throughout the story, we see small references to this group here and there as they grow and become more dangerous. Aiko's mother is just one of many, but she's an important depiction of a complete failure. Not because she broke or nothing, I'm not saying get your money up. She failed to stand up to the struggles of the world, the great struggle of human life, to face the world head on and find peace with it, something so many of us fail at. It's why Griffith's new nation of Falconia is so creepy to me. Even though under the surface it's ran by literal monsters and demons, it plays into this need for perfection, feeds the people an image of a perfect being who will guide them away from the darkness. But at least according to Poom Poom, we cannot get rid of this darkness. It's a part of us. Throughout history, there have been so many ideologies born from this failure. The nature of their beliefs differ, but at its core, they're all born from that same failure. A mass of people who have failed to accept the world around them, determined to eliminate evil and perfect the world. Evil is a powerful word, born from that struggle to respond to the world's greatness. Kaneki from Tokyo Ghoul is this struggle to a T. Throughout the story, he constantly flips on what and who he deems to be evil, especially during his time in the CCG. He needs to identify evil so he can always be on the side of good. It's a thought process that will drive you mad, as it does for him many times. What's wrong isn't me, what's wrong is the world. That's the mindset that drives Kaneki for the majority of the story, a mindset Inio Asano, author of Poom Poom, wanted to critique with this cult storyline. Up until Poom Poom, all my manga was absolutely chock full of scenes where I'm just talking about myself, or these dialogues where characters go back and forth just to show how right my opinions are. The truth is that I really hate that stuff, but I just wanted people to understand so badly, and I'd get so irritated that I'd start preaching anyway. Sometimes we feel so justified in our beliefs, we can't accept anything else. The frustration of the wrongs of the world weigh upon us heavily and slowly convince us of our self-righteousness. And though we'd like to believe that being righteous would make us better, it does quite the opposite. It makes us spiteful and angry. It causes us to pull away from our fellow man. It makes it harder for us to accept each other, to accept ourselves. But what other way is there? Is it so wrong to want to see a world without suffering? Well, yes. I bet you weren't expecting that answer. Struggle, contend, wriggle. That alone is the sword of one who confronts death. Keep struggling and struggling until the end of ends, then struggle some more. If there's one thing that can be learned from Guts, Griffith, Kaneki, and Poon Poon, it's that to be human is to struggle, and to deny yourself that struggle is to deny your humanity. It's like everyone's favorite Guts quote says, there's no paradise for you to escape to. What you'll find, what's there, is just a battlefield. Go back to your battlefield. I've always loved this quote because it's an encapsulation of everything that it means to be human, everything Guts has learned on his journey. Life is in itself a battle. What it means to win the battle is subjective, but I think what a failure looks like is clear. When we try to find a way to circumvent that struggle, we have failed. Victory only feels good when you know defeat. Love only satisfies you when you know loneliness. You must accept the pain. Without it, pleasure would not be possible. In the end, this world isn't right. It isn't wrong. It just is.